Hello everyone, my name is Mike Boulder. I am your instructor during this EMS Renewal course. We're going to go through and talk a little bit about the rules and regs as they pertain to New Mexico EMS providers in New Mexico. And it doesn't matter if you're a first responder or if you're a paramedic, you need to stay informed about the rules and regs and any changes. Fortunately, we haven't had much change during the past 4 years, little tweaks here and there, and so we'll get right into it. One of the items that it came very useful during COVID was the crisis clause, I like to refer to it. And it essentially allows in a crisis that the EMS Bureau, the Department of Health, can make changes to the rules and regs to respond to the crisis. A good example during COVID, face-to-face CE requirements was eliminated, and you could do all your CEs online. And that was probably a great relief to a lot of folks, especially because we're being taxed and people didn't have the time also to get out to classes. Another example, if we had another pandemic, but say a particular antiviral was effective against it, we could actually change the rules to allow first responders to administer that during that crisis. So a valuable tool to have, one hopefully we'll never have to have seen again. Regarding EMS renewals, most of you guys have probably gone through the renewal process several times, but it's just making sure that we're not missing anything. We'll cover the key points again. One thing that changed, and I mentioned that about the crisis clause, is now 50% of your CEs must be live or synchronous education. Well, what is synchronous education? Well, synchronous education is when I'm and the instructor are in the same room, or I'm able to communicate them in real time. Obvious, live classroom, conference, easy to understand. But when can an online course be considered synchronous? Let's say someone's offering a CE class via Zoom, and during that Zoom you can send questions to the instructor via chat or actually talk to them directly. That is synchronous. You can think of synchronous learning as having a live instructor, just like in the environment. It can be done in different media. It can be done online. It can be done in a classroom. It can be done in a conference, but you have that live interaction. Asynchronous education is what we're doing right now. You're watching this. Hey, you might have a question. You can send me an email or a text on it, but it's not real-time communication. So one simple remember, if you're dealing with a live instructor in the moment, it's synchronous. If it's not, and there's a delay in your questions, it's asynchronous. When in doubt, though, please get with the EMS Bureau to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, because you really don't want to get caught short at the last minute. All right, the different ideas behind there. One thing is that remember the most important thing is that your CEs must be done by December 31st of the year preceding your renewal date. So most of you in here are going to be renewing on March 31st, 2025. That means all your CEs must be done by midnight, December 31st, 2024. Now, it's a little bit different than National Registry. National Registry, you can do your CEs up until midnight on March 31st. But the EMS Bureau, you must have them all done in New Mexico, we must have them done by December 31st. Now, one exemption to that is CPR. The requirement is that your CPR must be current at the time of renewal. If your CPR card, you took your CPR in January 30th, 2025, it's just as valid as if you took it in December. And the card must be current through your renewal process. Now again, that means it has to be current on March 31st, 2025. If it expires in May 30th, that's on you to make sure you keep current on, but the Bureau wouldn't stop your renewal process. Everything's been broken down to 6 categories, and again, we'll talk a little bit about National Registry. This isn't exactly lines up perfectly with National Registry, but we'll talk about how it does. One is preparatory operations category. That's pretty much standard. That is, if you're not dealing with direct patient contact stuff, a good example, communication, charting, incident command, auto extrication, those are considered operations. One thing, be careful, you FAR guys out there, fire tactics and fire ground operations that doesn't apply to a medical scenario can't be used for your renewal. Again, anytime you have something you're wondering, hey, will this fit? You're better off calling the EMS Bureau, talk to them first, and then, like I say, on December, the end of December, that you're now missing 15 hours and you're scrambling to find them. Airway ventilation, from the nose to the bottom to the diaphragm, all the parts inside there, whether it be airway management, how to set up vents, managing asthma, treating acute pulmonary edema, those would be airway ventilation. Cardiovascular, heart, stroke, MIs. You can probably, again, you can sometimes work with the EMS Bureau. Let's say a good example. I have tons of cardiovascular emergency. I took this class on congested heart failure and the management of pulmonary edema. It was categorized cardiovascular. The Bureau may, especially if you're proactive, contact them and say, hey, I got plenty of hours in cardiovascular. I'm short a little bit on airway ventilation. Can I use this pulmonary edema class that was categorized cardiovascular for my airway ventilation? Medical emergencies, again, all the ologies, whether it be neurology, things going on with seizures, altered mental status, endocrinology type problems like diabetes, anaphylaxis, abdominal pain. Those are kind of lumped into medical. It's interesting, OB and GYN emergencies are also part of medical. Trauma is if it's broken or bleeding, and it's trauma. That's pretty straightforward. We can figure that one out. Special consideration is mostly pediatric. That's the biggest component of special consideration, and that's kind of easy. Anything from neonates to a 16-year-old is in your area of pediatrics. And then special consideration are those special populations, geriatrics patients that are with chronic medical illness. They're at home on a home ventilator. It's a good category for those. The bariatric patient. So again, those special patient populations that don't quite fit in the above categories. And the hours are broken down, and make sure you know how many hours of each category you have, and then you keep track of them. Most people that provide CEs, and we'll talk briefly about it, will upload these to their EMS portal, and where your license information, where you do your renewal. And so you should be able to see an ongoing total of the number of hours in each category you have available to you. Always make sure you keep a paper copy, because you're always subject to being audited. You can always know if you're going to be audited. The Bureau actually posts who's going to be audited on the website, so you can actually go and find out. But I would always advise you, make sure you keep paper copies of your certificates, just in case you get asked for them. Or if there's a missing piece of CE, you have the documentation to put it in yourself. And again, as we move to the basic, CPR again is one requirement, and then the hours increase from the 20 hours for the first responder. Now it's 40 hours for the basic. It kicks up to 50 hours for the intermediate. And then at the paramedic, it's 60 hours as well. And the paramedics also have the requirement of having a current ACLS card at time of renewal as well. All right. EMS background check. Good news. Unless you are in a reentry, you let your license lapse and you're trying to get it reestablished, you don't have to go down and get your fingerprints done, as most of us had to do several years in a row. But you do have to get a form from the New Mexico Department of Safety arrest report for all EMTs, and you pay the fee to the Department of Safety. It's a notarized form that gets submitted to the Bureau. Yeah, a little savings to one degree, and other ones not. There is actually forms on the EMS Bureau website can specifically tell you how to go about doing this process. And if you're in here because you are doing your initial licensure or reciprocity or reentry, again, on the EMS website under licensing, you can find information on how you go about getting your fingerprints. Most of us from the good old days always remember you had to have your license on you at all times. You don't have to keep your wallet card on you at all times. because you can go electronically, you can go to the Bureau and the website and find out who's licensed and who is not. So you're no longer required to keep that state license in your wallet at all times. New Mexico DNR, there's still New Mexico DNR, and that's a standard form that a patient can fill out and have their physician sign, and there's actually an envelope that they can post on, like on their refrigerator or someplace, to give us directions on what to do. Again, remember that DNR is do not resuscitate. It does not mean do not treat. Still provide comfort care for these people. Still provide them oxygen to help relieve that sensation of being smothered. If they're in pain, you can give them pain medication. We can suction their airway. We can position them in positions of comfort. What we can't do is start giving artificial ventilations. We can't start compressions. We can't defibrillate. But we don't not treat them, we provide them with comfort care. There is another thing that we're allowed to do. Before it was referred to as a POST, and that stands for a physician order, a scope of treatment. And that could be a little bit different than a DNR. A DNR is kind of a yes, no, you're going to resuscitate, not resuscitate. The POST, and then it's been changed to a MOST, which is a medical order of scope of treatment, is a form that tells you exactly what the person is supposed to have provided to them. It's much more explicit than a DNR. It may actually say that the patient can be provided, with CPAP. They may be provided with NEB treatments. It gives you a little bit more clearance on what it is this patient wants to have done towards the end of life. All right, talk a little bit about National Registry. It's called the National Continuing Competency Program. One of the nice things about being a New Mexico EMT, and if you have all your CEs and you meet all New Mexico's requirement for renewal, you have met National Registry requirement for renewal. So it makes it kind of easy. They're portable. You have the same type of portal on National Registry, if you haven't been on it, that you log in your CEs. If you take anything that CAP's accredited, the national accreditation process, they automatically get uploaded into your National Registry portal. If you're not, then you have to manually enter them. But if you're meeting New Mexico requirements, you will meet National Registry requirement. Now, a couple of things different about National Registry decided not to go back to the 50% being online education and 50% had to be synchronous. They essentially allow you to use distance education for all your renewal requirements. Okay? So it gives you an option there if you're trying to renew. There's also a form you can go to National Registry, and it kind of takes all these different card classes that are out there, from ACLS to Tactical Combat Casualty Care Course, and tell you how those hours meet against their framework for renewal requirements. Again, not so critical if you do National Registry in New Mexico, you met National Registry, but if you're looking for specific courses to meet National Registry, there's a form available on their website that can show you how you can take different type of card courses to actually get your renewal requirement met. And again, if you haven't, you just log into the portal for the National Registry. It's very similar to the portal for New Mexico, and there is a document on this page for you if you've never been to the portal. It's a little guide to help you through the New Mexico EMS portal. All right. Thank you all very much, and you have a good day.